Keynote extension by Gever Tulley. My name is Tracy McDowell, and I am an Alliance board member and past president of the Alliance. I am also a junior kindergarten teacher at Sears School, and we're so thrilled with the fabulous turnout of educators at this event today. Gever Tulley, hopefully all of you were able to be in the Keynote presentation that we just left, but he is an author, speaker, and computer scientist. In 2005, he founded the Tinkering School, after-school and summer programs involving the use of real tools, materials, and problems to encourage students' love of learning, curiosity about the world, tenacity to think big, and persistence to do amazing things. Most recently, in 2011, Gever created BrightWorks, a K-12 private school in San Francisco, where students explore an idea from multiple perspectives with the help of real-world experts, tools, and experiences. They collaborate on projects driven by their curiosity and share their findings with the world. Rather than tests, grades, and homework, BrightWorks supports students as they create a detailed portfolio of their work. Gever is also the author of 50 Dangerous Things You Should Let Your Children Do, an activity book for children and parents to use for exploring the world around them. And Dangerism, Why We Worry About the Wrong Things and What It Is Doing to Our Kids. For more information, you can visit his website, which is gevertulley.com. And just one more thing, I will be at the end doing Gateways credits, so if you need those, you'll see me later. But welcome to Gever.
Thanks, Tracy. I came to this conference last year and I just had such a good time that when Liza reached out to me, is she here? No. I'm really bad at email, and Liza was very persistent. I came back partly because she said, this year we have room in the conference, you could actually spend some time, working with people, and that's the part that I love about being an educator, is getting a chance to spend some time side by side with people trying to solve a problem, whether you're 5 or you're 55. And so when she, gave me an opportunity to do these 2 workshops, I thought, great. I had very grandiose plans, as I often do. And I thought we were going to bring in a couple of power tools and we were going to build something kind of incredible here together, and we were all going to learn how to operate these dangerous tools safely, and I could share a little bit of our approach of how we introduce children to dangerous tools. And then as I started to find out these beautiful places they were going to put us in, how inappropriate it would be for me to generate huge clouds of sawdust, we started playing with various ideas. And we, a year ago, started a partnership with a local public school where we sort of established a kind of most favored nation status with a classroom. I'm not quite sure how to characterize the relationship, but a science teacher who had a classroom in a very underfunded public high school, and her kids were mostly children who had, they were high school students, so had IEPs, or they had, what do you call the, one-on-one aid for a student? Yeah. So this classroom was very mixed in terms of ability, and she had the kids in her science classroom who had essentially been flunking or failing out of the other classrooms, and this was kind of remediation. And what I learned later was that the school district in San Francisco is able to kind of kettle these kids, put them in a different category, and those grades don't affect the grade average of the school. And what I realized was that meant they could essentially just write them off and ignore them. So in conversation, she reached out and she said, can we just, these kids have never gotten a chance to do anything exciting in this classroom. And as you know, I always like it if there's a little sense of a quest or a story that the kids can buy into. And we agreed to come and visit them first, and I brought pliers and sculptural wire. You know, inspired by the Reggio kind of notion of like, we can take an idea we're comfortable with, express it in a new material, and that'll kind of reveal to ourselves some new aspect of that idea. And I think this Reggio concept is really beautiful in its simplicity. And I guess Maria was a fan of this as well, Montessori. And we're on a first name basis, at least in my head. I arrived in this classroom to discover that it had been so long since anybody had asked these kids to do anything with their hands, they were almost incapable of making a 90-degree bend in a piece of wire. Not with any precision, right? And they were showing me things that were sort of curved like this, like saying, oh, Mr. Tulley, is this correct? And I'd be like, it's Gever, but no, that's not quite right. Let me demonstrate. And we ended up spending a good deal of the class just working on this like manual dexterity thing. We got to the end of this class. They're a block-structured school, so 3 days a week they have classes that are more than 60 minutes long. They're like 75 minutes long. I think it's a fantastic baby step for traditional classrooms to take to allow time for things to develop. But that being said, at the end of this 75-minute period, we really had nothing to show for it, and the kids were not any more excited about that than anything else that they had experienced in that classroom. And I was seeing this and I was like, okay, this didn't work. What other thing? Long story short, I tried a couple more sessions, wasn't quite engaging, and then I thought, well, let's do something that doesn't require a lot of manual dexterity, but does require a lot of iteration. It emphasizes iteration. And what I came up with was marble on track, right? Marble on a piece of track. We could set some goals in the classroom, and the marble is sort of the hero of the story. Could we get the marble to go all the way around the classroom? Could we get the marble to, jump from this table to that table? All these various ideas. So the kids at my school and I went to our, here you can see it a little clearer here, went into our shop and we got the scrap lumber. And speaking of iterations, after a couple of design iterations, we discovered that using the table saw, we could cut 5 pieces of track out of a single 2x3. So this is wood that's already sort of written off by the school as scrap. It's full of holes, it's been painted, whatever. We still use it. I mean, every piece of wood in our school goes through many reincarnations, but we can just intercept this essentially valueless stream and turn it into this track. And this track works out. If I went to the store and bought a full 8-foot length of this, taking you on a deep design dive for a second here, just bear with me. If we bought an 8-foot length of board at the hardware store and brought it to the school and cut it up into track, then that's $1.50 for the board, and we're getting 5 pieces of track that are 8 feet long. It's cheaper than any other form of plastic track we can buy, right? And we get to make it out of scrap. And what we discovered, it's just as high performance as a Mattel Hot Wheel track. It's not flat, but it's incredibly frictionless and precise in its construction, with this very simple jig on the table saw to make it. And so we produced, starting 3 days before I left on an airplane, the students just took turns in the shop and produced over 100 pieces of track. And we put it in a big box and I carried it on an airplane. And security took the box entirely apart and taped it back together in some totally wonky way. But my point is that this track, because it only requires kind of gross motor movements, reduced the anxiety that the kids had. It reduced the performance anxiety. Anyone can put a piece of track somewhere and see what happens to a marble on it, right? It didn't have that like, I have to make something beautiful or clever or designy, right? It's just, can I get a marble to go from point A to point B? I know just a moment ago I said, let's avoid point A to point B, but that was a different context. That ability to just like set that up and do the experiment actually unlocked a kind of, it took 2 sessions, but it unlocked a kind of scientific thinking in these kids that they hadn't really experienced before, which was to take on a challenge. The one that they came up with and that I sort of loved was, could we get a marble to go from one table to another as a jump, right? And so they had this team that sort of spawned this idea that took over the class that day, had a hypothesis that if everything was precisely aligned, then the marble ought to land in that next track at an angle where it doesn't bounce. We need to make sure, because if it comes in like this, if it's off by just a fraction of an inch, it'll ricochet with all that energy from the jump. But if we tip it like this, then it'll come down and it'll just kind of slide before it, gets out of the track. It'll get moving in the new direction. And so there was this like hypothesis floated out there based on their previous experience with the track. And the thing about this is that this hypothesis that they had was the first evidence of like hypothesizing anyone had ever seen out of this group of kids. And it was just because they felt comfortable in the context of this problem space. Later, we were able to build in some math about how fast is a ball going. How much energy does we were using steel ball bearings, they were kind of heavy. I didn't want to use glass marbles because I was afraid they were going to shatter on the concrete floor and I deal with glass in the classroom. But these ball bearings were heavy and they carried a lot of kinetic energy. And so if you ran off the end of a ramp and into something, that thing would likely be destroyed. You know, it would get knocked by the first marble and the next marble that came along wouldn't experience the same trajectory or flight. And so they started to have to deal with this notion. And so that opened up a chance to talk about like, where is all the energy in this marble? Turns out it was potential energy, just to go back to an earlier idea. But that we started to be able to quantify these things. And they realized we can figure out how far this marble is going to jump. And we ended up doing some algebra and some physics that, like previously, math topics had caused this class to turn to rebel. Emotionally, physically, these were very large kids, and to create a kind of hostile environment for everyone because of their math anxiety. And yet we had kind of accidentally snuck up on it from an area where they felt comfortable. And this kind of reinforced and developed a concept. We say build from strength. If there's an area that you're uncomfortable with, maybe we go back to that thing that you really love and show you how to get from there, from your competence, over into this area that's challenging to you. So we can take that kid who only loves to play guitar, and we can start talking about how music is made up of fractions, and all those fractions add up to measures, and all those measures add up to a song, and the relationship between the frequency of the notes, all of the mathematical properties of music, but we can sneak up on it out of that area of strength and say like, you know, hey, play that chord again. And let's just look at where all these notes are. And oh, look at the harmonic relationship. I hear the harmonic relationship. You mean there's a numerical relationship as well? It's like, oh yeah, check this out. So we can sneak up on these things when we understand where the strength of the kids are. So we have kind of been trying out this idea of saying, let's build from strength. Let's take that subject that you're so nervous, so anxious about, let's just depressurize it for a little while by kind of turning our back on it, and then we'll sneak back to it. Don't worry, we'll get there. So that's sort of why I personally, this track represents a kind of beautiful discovery. What's so fantastic about so many of my personal discoveries is that I don't come from the world of education, and they all seem new and fantastical to me. And a lot of you have been to school and seen these ideas in other contexts. And I just want to say, like the kids, when we create opportunities for ourselves as educators to discover something for ourselves, it can be as thrilling and carry as much like adrenaline as when we see our children in our classrooms having those aha moments. Did you know there's a neurochemical basis to the aha moment? It is a fantastic soup of adrenaline and dopamine and serotonin, and it's amazing what happens when we have that moment of discovery. Our brains are wired for that. I learned this talking to a neurologist on an airplane. I was explaining it to him. He was like, oh yeah, well, you know, we never want to forget which cave the saber-toothed tiger jumped out at. So if we sport the brain with a little adrenaline, it transfers the memory immediately from short-term into long-term memory. It doesn't work exactly like that, but it sets us up for that, so we never forget, right? Not sure what saber-toothed tigers have to do with marble track, but here's what I'd like to do today. We're gonna do an exploration with these materials, and to do this, we're gonna have to get up from our tables and play with these materials. I think there's like 53 of us or something in here, and there's just about 100 of these pieces of track left. So I don't, you don't have to think about divvying them up, but what I would really like to see happen is let's form into groups of, anywhere between 2 and 5, whatever you're comfortable with. I don't need to author that for you. But what I would like to see, what I would like to propose is just a little bit of a challenge. And it's made more challenging because we're not in an incredible makerspace full of ad hoc resources for building. We're in a beautiful meeting room with an incredible view out the windows, but very little materials to construct with. So can we get, we don't have marbles, we have ping pong balls. Can we get a ping pong ball to move across a number of tables and come back to the front? Can we start somewhere up here, go out there, and come back? And we don't have a lot of time. Normally a workshop like this, I'll do these for a whole day, right? And what I'll do is, as I see patterns that I recognize from my students or from other things we've tried, I'll turn on my microphone and I'll make this noise. I'll say, "Ho!" And that just means come and take a look at me, right? I use that noise because normally I don't have a microphone, and I have one of the quietest voices in my school, but I found I can make that noise kind of loud enough, and now I'm habituated. But so I invite everybody to come find your affinity group, who you're sitting with, whatever ad hoc arrangement you are. Let's play with this idea for a few minutes, and I guarantee you we're going to see and observe some interesting things, and I'm going to try to surprise you with those, because I've become a cultural anthropologist of tinkering, and I know what I'm looking at when I look at a group working on an interesting problem. So everybody understand the definition of the problem? We're going to start from the materials table. Well, let's start from that empty table. We're going to go down that way some distance, and we're going to try to get back here with a ping pong ball. Right? Yes?
Are we building all together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One.
Right.
So small.
That's an excellent question. We're all building together. That was her question. Are we all building together? Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you said break up into 2 and 3, it's just like...
Well, a problem like this is easy to subdivide, and I think you'll find a natural, I'm going to try to get from this table to that table, and that's what I'm going to focus on.
Okay.
That'll be great. I almost gave away. Oh. I could have let you, yeah, anyway. I make a lot of mistakes. Any other questions? Anybody have anything about that? And then also, if you just see me wandering around and you had a question from my presentation earlier, that was a brand new presentation for me. It has some slides from other talks, but mostly the whole theme and the way I put it together is a whole new thing. And I want to thank you all for being my test audience for that. I was a little nervous when I started because last night when I read through, I went 10 minutes over. If you see me and you just have a question, feel free. I mean, from this moment on, it's a casual conversation, and like a knitting circle, we have something to focus our hands on, right? Everybody good with that? All right, come on up.
Okay, here goes. What about over here? Is there anything else we can do? Tell them back there. Can I try again? Yeah. Kind of let it. Here, I can try again.
No, we're looking at we're looking
I'm up here, folks. I just want to ask, I'm seeing something that I often see when I work with adults, which is that very few ping pong balls have been sent down this track yet, right? So there's something that we often do as adults. We think we have a really good idea of what it is, and we just like, boom. But when we see kids do it, we're like, now, hold on. Like, have you tried sending a marble down there yet? Have you tested any one of these steps? But already the kid is invested in half a mile of track, and now they have an emotional attachment to the solution they're working on, and we have a new problem, which is when that solution fails, they will emotionally distance themselves from the outcome. Well, I didn't really care about the damn marble anyway, right? And that emotional distancing is one of about 9 types of disengagement that we pay attention to now. When we see that about to happen, sometimes we can intervene early and just say, hey, let's test what we have. Because then we can make some adjustments before they've committed all that, what they feel like was a great effort, because in their minds it was working perfectly, and now they're upset that it doesn't meet their expectations. Does that make sense? Yeah. Great. Thanks. Back to work, everybody.
Just past the chair? Yeah. Right here. Let's see. It might put another set of chairs between the two tables.
Can we keep testing the first track? Can we girls keep testing it?
With the box. That seems like it might the same height as the box.
My daughter, you just made my
I just want you to pause for 1 second and notice that you've started to develop, whether you have words for it or not, you have a vocabulary around this problem space that you've invented to be able to talk to each other about the recurring kinds of problems you have, like the emergence of the paper to try and capture and corral, the use of uphill slopes to kind of bleed off some of this kinetic energy that the ping pong ball picks up, right? All of these techniques emerge naturally out of the exploration of materials. You're becoming marble track physicists in a certain sense, right? And I'm just looking to see, does anybody know what time this ends?
11:15.
11:15, fantastic.
55.
Okay, 20 minutes, we have 20 minutes, good. That's going to give us actually time to embellish once, because it looks like we're pretty close to getting this to come back to us. So,
Maybe try it, yeah.
back to work. Back to work, everybody. Back to work.
Yeah. Now we have to here. We need some tape, please. Tape, please. I don't know what tape this is. Is it okay? I don't know what it says.
Getting taped into.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. We're also gonna need to see those sales like really. Just keep trying. Yeah. Right. Keep going, maybe two. Yeah. Watch out. I don't think those kids continue with toasters. Alright, but really quick.
Something new and different, and I think this is what we
Try it again. I went, yeah. More like some will fail, some will
Okay, it looks like we're close to a reliable run. Can I get two people with cell phones? We can video, we can get one staged at the turnaround, one staged at the launch. And then you'll need to be able to share those videos back to me. But we'll get an actual filmed trial run when you think it's ready. It's always good to test this right before it's fully reliable. So it looks like cameras are ready. Let us know when you're ready at the turn. I'll point out another observation. I noticed that the ball testing, the ball runs are a little bit ad hoc. They're sort of whenever he feels like putting a ball up there. One thing that sometimes emerges in a situation like this is okay, 30 seconds everybody, let's do another test. There's a little choreography around the running of the ball that emerges sometimes, and this actually helps prepare the actual test we're trying right now. What are we trying? We're trying the new corner. So I'm deliberately pausing us here to try out this new corner, which they are rapidly building because they know this test is about to happen, and we're all watching and waiting for them to be ready. Are you feeling some sense of anxiety? And no response from the corner team. Yeah, but look at the commitment, the concentration, right? It took them a few seconds to realize I was talking about it. It's a sign of engagement, right? The fact that you had to call their attention twice. It's looking a little ad hoc down there.
But a telephone.
Testing in 5. Why don't you try 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh! 2.
It's going. Oh, we're gonna do 5 in a row.
You know they would do something like that.
Or do you want a little bit of a pause between them, or?
No.
Okay, 5 all at once. Whoa.
About 5.
So that was more than I expected to make it. So normally at a moment like this, I would sort of propose a continuing challenge, but I think we have about 12 minutes left. And I thought we'd just take a moment and see, is there something, a moment that stood out to you where you experienced like a little bit of frustration, like these materials are not quite right, and it would be so much easier if ... Anybody have a feeling of frustration like that? Yeah. That cup, the cup was misbehaving, right? And it's a little bit like the thing that I warned you about at the beginning, is that if we make too big a commitment before we start testing, we can start to, we come up against this, the emotional investment is high, and the outcome is not meeting that expectation, and that emotional distancing from projects happens a lot. It's one of the ways that kids, especially when they transfer into our school, I think the kind way to say it would be they lack persistence. They don't have the tenacity. They haven't bought into a story so hard yet that they'll fight through any obstacle to get to the end, right? They're just not used to it. And that we find that sometimes takes them as much as a year, 2 years to get to a place where we see them so lost in their project that if we took away all the good materials and just gave them, I don't know, Rice Krispies to build with, they would just keep going. They would keep building. They wouldn't be eating the Rice Krispies. They would be like, okay, if I dip these in epoxy, they turn into bricks, and okay, and then I can stack the bricks and I can use this. You know, we find that when they're fully committed, there's almost nothing that will stop them. And, you know, sometimes parents will tell us, like, she was up, I didn't know she got up in the middle of the night. She was up past like 2 in the morning. She's just exhausted. Can I bring her in at lunchtime instead of first thing in the morning, because she's just been working on this thing all night. We see that most often when the kids are working on their NaNoWriMo novels. The National Novel Writing Month is in November, and our school is kind of committed to this project in some, I don't know how it happened. I mean, I do know how it happened, but this project expresses all of these same great characteristics of project-based learning that we see with these physical projects is happening in the writing domain. Their story has gone off the rails. My characters aren't behaving. I don't know what's going on. It's making me crazy. Can I just go to the cafe and write? Yes, yes you can. Get out of here. Come back when you have a new chapter that solves all of these problems. The other thing that we sometimes see happening is their idea of what they were going to do is not achievable with the set of skills that they have. And the distance, to use Vygotsky's term, the distance between their capabilities and what they need is outside their zone of proximal development. They actually can't get there. So what are we going to do? Well, let's try bringing in a teenager. Maybe it's in the grasp of that teenager, and if we can create a partnership, a healthy partnership, we can actually help this child achieve their goal, this 8-year-old that has this amazing idea. Maybe we can get a version of that working if we just had a few more dexterous hands, or someone who knew more about the problem space, right? And then one of the beauties of our mixed age environment is that we can do that in a very ad hoc way. Like as needed, we can kind of like put a call out to the high school program and go, hey, Anybody up there who's like not engaged right now and could just come and help with this really complicated thing that needs dexterous hands or a mind that knows a few more solutions than duct tape? I guess the other thing that we see sometimes in these experiments that we tease out in here is where there's a collaboration kind of skill gap in that social and emotional development of that child. Are they participating with a team, with one other student, with a group of other students? And are they getting frustrated because they feel like their idea isn't being heard? Is that because they're not sharing their idea in a way that the other kids understand? Is that because they're being bullies with their idea? You know, we get this like creative bullying that happens where my idea is better just because it comes from me. Your idea stinks because it comes from you. There's ways around that, but we have to develop the way of seeing how some of your contribution really helps with my contribution that gets us to a place that's much more exciting. In my summer camp, we see this happen all the time because they're committed to that. If we build this go-kart, we're going to get to ride it 3/4 of a mile down this canyon where the farm is, where we have the camp. It's all downhill and it's surrounded by poison oak. So it's pretty, like, you better get your steering and your brakes working. I guess that's the shark-infested waters equivalent in nature. But the collaboration sometimes needs a reason. They need a tangible reason to work on those collaboration skills, and they need to see it work sometimes. We found that if we just expect them to collaborate and we scold them for not collaborating, and I'm putting scold in quotes there because I'm just trying to wrap up this anecdote, but if we're over-encouraging collaboration before they've seen the value of it, then sometimes they resist for longer than they should until they realize, like, my idea is so big I can't actually build it in time. I can't get it done before the deadline. I need a couple of people to work with me. That's a great motivator to realize, like, oh, this will work better if I can recruit them with how amazing my idea is. Can you help me rewrite my pitch paragraph? Because right now, nobody wants to help me build this thing. The last point I want to make is that sometimes kids state their ideas in a way that feels like it's setting us up for failure, right? We had a student come to our school, and all he wanted to do was build rockets. That's all he wanted to do was build rockets. And we're like, we're sorry, the state of California doesn't allow us to do anything with explosives in the school with students. And I mean, we've found ways around it in certain cases, but you're 6 and we don't want to do that with you. And one of our teaching staff had this moment where the young boy was just like heartbroken. Our staff Sean just sat with him for a minute and said, well, tell me what do you want to do here? He said, I want to build a rocket. I've been here for 3 months and I haven't gotten to build a rocket. I want to build a rocket. And Sean's like, okay, what kind of rocket? And he's like, a 3-stage booster rocket. We're going to the moon. And Sean's like, okay, because you know how it is. Sometimes kids know more about some topic than you expect them to. And this kid had this incredibly detailed understanding of what this rocket was going to be, and he was describing chemical booster systems and how he was going to avoid these problems that they had in the Saturn V rocket, and all of this detail is coming out. And Sean's just like letting it wash over him, like getting more and more like, I'm just going to disappoint this kid in a minute. And finally he says, like, so how should we start? And the kid's in the shop with Sean. It's before school is opened. And he looks around and the kid is like, we're going to need some cardboard boxes. He's like, oh, okay, let's get some cardboard boxes. And they built this rocket that the kid really wanted to build, and it turned out that he actually wasn't imagining building the physical rocket, even though every description he gave, every disappointment that he experienced in things that we did that were kind of rocket-based were just that he wanted to build one he could sit in and make rocket noises and have his friends get in there with him. And it was so clear. And all Sean had to ask was, how should we start? How should we start? And in that, it revealed that gap between our understanding of his goal and what the basis of his story really was. He wants to sit in a rocket that he made and make rocket noises. So I hope you had fun today. I need a little bit of help gathering all the pieces back onto this table. I understand they're going to eat here in a few minutes. So let's get it tidied up. And thank you all so much for just jumping in. Yeah.